On Tuesday, the Idaho Division of Vocational Rehab told the Idaho State Rehabilitation Council that it may need to implement wait lists for future clients should they run short of funds during this fiscal year or the next. The division made news earlier this month when it notified the legislature's budget committee that it may run out of funds before the end of the fiscal year and that it couldn't pinpoint how the accounting error occurred or how big the problem was. During Tuesday's meeting, Division Director Jane Donnellan told the council that the problem began in 2021 when Voc Rehab began paying bills from one fiscal year with future fiscal year appropriations, which compounded the accounting issues over time. In addition to wait lists, the division may need to prioritize services for clients with the most significant disabilities. Producer Ruth Brown has more on our website. You'll find the link at idahoreports.org. On Thursday, Alex Adams, administrator for the Division of Financial Management, joined me to discuss the Voc Rehab budgeting issues as well as how the rest of the legislative session went for Governor Brad Little. Alex, thanks so much for joining us. Has the division spoken to the governor's office about their concerns that it may have to potentially put clients on wait lists?
Well, so when this issue first surfaced, it was prior to the end of legislative session, and the division did reach out to myself and to the governor's office and flagged their concerns. It was through those discussions that we worked with the division to bring a supplemental request to JFAC. And our message was essentially, let us look under the hood, let us figure out what the problems are, but let's not put the clients that the division serves at risk. It was our sincere hope that the clients and the services would continue. That said, at the time, the governor did request an audit. And the scope of that is being defined and the contract is being finalized. In the meantime, though, we brought in a former state financial officer and had him go over to the division, work with their finance team and leadership team, and try to identify what's going on.
So it was your sincere hope that clients ultimately wouldn't be affected by these budgeting issues. It looks like that might ultimately end up being the case if potential future clients have to go on wait lists. Is there currently a backup plan for other commissions or councils like the State Independent Living Council that are affected by this, that receive their funding routed through vocational rehab?
So there's very limited access to funds outside of legislative appropriations for pretty important reasons. So I think a lot of it's going to come down to the division having to minimize their expenses, minimize costs, and prioritize focusing on clients and their partner agencies.
Has the governor's office been a part of any of those conversations with the partner agencies like Silk?
I don't know the answer to that directly. Most of my conversations have been with the division. The division did flag the issue with the partner agencies prior to the adjournment of the legislative session, so it was a known issue.
This came out this week that this issue started years ago when the division was paying bills from other fiscal years. So using fiscal year 24 appropriation to pay bills from fiscal year 23. The issue compounded over those years. Is your office sure that no other departments or divisions are doing the same thing, paying bills from one fiscal year with another fiscal year's appropriation?
Well, you see it from time to time. I mean, occasionally Medicaid has to hold a bill across fiscal years is probably the most prominent example I've seen. And I remember a time in recent years when a sitting lieutenant governor was careening to overspending her budget, and certain decisions had to get held, for example. So it happens. I think by and large, though, we have a fiscally conservative cabinet, fiscally conservative agency heads, and more often than not, at the end of a year, we're reverting $10 to $20 million of unused funds because most agencies are managing their budgets wisely, prudently, and returning those dollars at the end of the year. Why that's important is we're under a surplus eliminator, so every dollar that agencies return at the end of the year goes out to the taxpayers in the form of property tax relief. So there's examples of it happening, Voc Rehab, Medicaid, previous lieutenant governor, but it tends to be the exception, thankfully not the norm. And the norm is agencies returning money at the end of the year.
How did this go on for so long without getting caught?
I think that's why the governor requested the audit. We've seen enough of these where you don't want to prejudge until you have all of the facts on the table. So I would stop short of speculating. Let's get all the facts on the table, and then let's diagnose the problem and apply the appropriate solution.
Understanding that we're still waiting for the results of that yet to be started audit, is there a plan to make sure that this doesn't happen again, either in vocational rehab or in any other division?
Yeah, certainly the attention that this has brought has catalyzed quite a bit of conversations across the executive branch. So it has served as a very useful discussion point with agency fiscal officers across state government.
Briefly, the governor also expressed concern in early April that one of the bills that he signed about the legislature needing to approve future Medicaid waivers would affect whether or not the state could pay bills and other pending invoices that had to do with current Medicaid waivers and those clients and service providers. Has the state received any guidance from the Attorney General as to whether you can, in fact, pay those current invoices?
So my understanding is the department was sending a letter this week to the Attorney General's office with some very specific questions. The legislature has tried to make what their intent was clear, and the department is trying to square that with the plain text of the bill. So a series of questions went to the Attorney General's office, and hopefully that will help illuminate the path forward. I think one of the things that the governor has made clear is that the things that he put in that letter about the behavioral health plan, payments for skilled nursing facilities, and all of the other things that are important to Idahoans and the health and the safety of Idahoans, we will find a path forward. And what that path forward looks like will depend in part upon the specific answers that come back from the Attorney General's office.
Those issues were, of course, unexpected, but when you look at the legislative session as a whole, how is the governor's office feeling about the appropriations the legislature ended up approving?
So the governor did a little bit of a tour this week talking about what the legislative session meant. And in January, he called for over $1 billion in school facility funding. He got $1.5 billion of school facility funding. He asked to fully fund launch. We got $75 million for launch so that 10,000 kids can go on to post-secondary opportunities. He asked for $200 million for bridges. Legislature appropriated $200 million for bridges. Structurally balanced budget, conservative growth 1.7%, maxed out rainy day funds, money for parks, money for water infrastructure. A lot to like in what happened this legislative session.
Was there anything that you wish the legislature had done but they didn't do?
No, I think they were probably the biggest thing. Governor had requested money to double funding for school counselors, taking it from $9 million up to 18. That would have helped with a lot of the behavioral health and counseling issues that we have with our youth. And then simultaneously, schools could have used it in a manner to augment post-secondary career counseling and some of those things now that we have Idaho Launch. So that is one that didn't happen this year, but certainly will be on the radar screen for future legislative sessions.
This was also the first legislative session where state agencies and the legislature went through its new budgeting process through the Joint Finance Appropriations Committee. From your perspective, how did that new budgeting process go?
Sure. It was a new process. I mean, shorter presentations, agencies, rather than doing long-form presentations, pivoted to Q&A, and budgets were set more frequently throughout session rather than all at the end. So, I mean, it was a pretty substantial change. Our approach all session was the legislature sets the process, we'll work within the process. Hard to argue with the outcomes. I mean, funding for facilities, funding for launch, funding for roads and bridges, funding for parks. So process will always be determined by the legislature, but in terms of the outcomes, I know we were very happy with how things wrapped up this session.
Alex Adams, Administrator for the Division of Financial Management. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. Appreciate it.